Phew. Jeez. Hello, everyone. Peter the Cat here once again. And I have just come back from an incredible journey to obtain this. This is Garfield's Judgment Day, a kid's book. It's been out of print for years, but it's special because it was supposed to be the Garfield movie, but it got rejected because a lot of movie studios that Jim Davis approached to animate it, they all thought it was too dark. And so he turned it into a kid's book instead. Unfortunately, since, like I said, it's been out of print for a long time, I couldn't find it in any used bookstores, so the only thing I could do was to break into the Paws Inc. vault and steal their one remaining copy. So here we go. Garfield's Judgment Day, the Lost Garfield movie. Our story begins on a beautiful summer morning. As usual, Garfield is sleeping in his bed, dreaming of lasagna, french fries, chocolate ice cream, and, well, you know Garfield. A nice warm sunbeam finds its way into Garfield's room, signaling him that it's time to get up and have breakfast. Now it is up to Garfield to get John out of bed. With some help from Odie and a few loud musical instruments, John is soon on his feet and in the kitchen. Garfield orders his usual breakfast of buckwheat pancakes, bacon, eggs, Benedict croissants, hash browns, orange juice, coffee, and, well, you know Garfield. Before long, John is tired of his energetic pets, who always seem to be underfoot, and they are promptly removed from the kitchen. And we have this kind of a weird angle of John from above. Alright, next page. A few doors down, the twin toy terriers Al and Fredo begin their daily task of stirring the Rossini family to life. The sound of all the jingling dog tags and a few well-placed yips and yaps will do the trick. Al and Fredo leap into Mr. and Mrs. Rossellini's bed, yipping and yapping and jingling their dog tags. The 5 Rossini children waken and join Al and Fredo on the bed. Soon there are bouncing pillows, blankets, dogs, and children on the bed. Yeah, well, I don't know. I guess for the feature film, Jim Davis decided to add in a bunch of new characters. I don't know. Down the street from the Rossini house lives old Ellie and his faithful companion, Barney. Barney has been in charge of waking Ellie every past day for the past 18 years. Ellie is often grouchy in the morning, and today is no exception. Barney walks into his bed and gently nudges Ellie. I guess I'll try an old man voice here. "Good morning, Barney," says Ellie sweetly. "Thank you for waking me up. I'll bet you'd like to have some breakfast, wouldn't you?" Barney nods and his head lovingly. "For 18 years you've been waking me up to get your breakfast, and for 18 years you've been getting your breakfast since when I was good and ready to give it to you. Get out of here and let an old man get some sleep," Ellie yelled. With that, he threw his slippers at Barney. Don't worry about Barney. He knows it's just Ellie's way. Garfield and Odie, yeah, nearly forgot there was a Garfield book, you may recall, had been politely asked to remove themselves from the kitchen. While they stood patiently, waiting at the back door for John to invite them back in, a sudden feeling of dread came over them. Kind of like a Stephen King book, you know. It was a nice, pleasant day in Maine. And then evil came! Huh. Something bad is going to happen, thought Garfield. He trembled. A quick survey of the other neighborhood animals revealed that they, too, felt the same uneasiness. Garfield and Odie were frightened. They wanted to run and hide under John's bed, along with the dust balls and bunny slippers. "Let us in, John! Please! Oh, let us in! Oh, please, let us in!" they begged. I'm not going to bother trying to do a Garfield voice. I can't imitate Lorenzo music very well. Finally, John opened the door. They were relieved to be inside, but the feeling of gloom hung on them. They ate silently, and Garfield didn't even try to steal Odie's food. Okay, he did, but he didn't enjoy it very much. After breakfast, John announced he was going to the supermarket. He told Garfield and Odie he'd bring back a surprise. The idea of a surprise brightened them for a moment. Garfield hoped the surprise would be something good to eat. The time had come for Garfield and Odie to attend their weekly meeting. They started toward the old abandoned theater where they met every Wednesday with Al, Fredo, Barney, Arlene, and all the other neighborhood cats and dogs. Sometimes even the stray cats and stray dogs came. They liked to get together and discuss their problems. There was usually plenty to discuss. And yeah, we see them going into the theater here. At the theater, the pets were filling the door. The usual conversations were taking place. Wet! Dry! Wet, I say. I prefer dry. While a couple of cats agreed over which was better, wet or dry cat food, Jacob the Rover discussed their flea problems. 3 stray dogs named Lorenzo, Willard, and Bob roamed in off the street. As usual, they too were arguing. Willard liked to think he was the leader of the 3, and that suited Lorenzo and Bob just fine. I do have to wonder if Lorenzo is supposed to be named after Garfield's voice actor, Lorenzo Music. Eventually, Jacob called the meeting to order. Jacob was a distinguished dog, well liked and respected by the other pets. The first item of business was what to do about the Wilson family. Seems they had just had their poor little kitten Mittens declawed. It was agreed that the Wilsons should be punished. So Lorenzo, Willard, and Bob volunteered to knock over their trash cans. Lorenzo, Willard, and Bob were not the most reliable or well-respected dogs, but they were good at knocking down trash cans, chasing mailmen, digging up flower beds, and other favorite cat and dog pranks. Next, the discussion turned to the pets' anger over all the stupid names they had been given. There were a lot of unhappy cats named Muffin, and all the dogs in the crowd who had been born with a spot were naturally named Spot. All the spotted dogs except Odie, that is. At about that time, a mouse scrambled out of its hole, making a daring attempt to cross the theater. All the cats immediately tore out of their seats in hot pursuit of the brave mouse. Jacob tried to regain control of the meeting, but when he could see that his efforts were useless, he threw up his paws in disgust, and the meeting was adjourned. "Wait!" yelled Garfield. "This meeting is not adjourned." The theater became silent, and all eyes were on Garfield. "I sense something bad coming our way. Odie does too. Admit it." "Don't all of you feel it?" asked Garfield. A quick scan of the crowd revealed that indeed all the animals felt the same uneasiness. "There's a storm coming that will destroy this town. We'll be lucky to survive. And what about our owners? They're our responsibility. They are also our food, our shelter, and our friends. We've got to warn them. My owner isn't great, but I'm sure hate to break in a new one at this late date," Garfield exclaimed. A dog in the crowd asked, "What are we supposed to do about it, Garfield?" "Face it," cried Garfield. "It's Judgment Day, people. We must warn our owners now, and bring them to the safety of this old theater. The walls are 3 feet thick, and there's no way this baby will blow. And here's the really great thing. There's only one way to do it. We'll tell them." The crowd of cats and dogs looked shocked as Garfield began to move his lips. He was speaking the way humans do. "Come on, everyone. Now's your chance to be a hero." "We can't. We have a pact with the other cats and dogs of the world. We swore we'd never speak to humans. We can't break the pact," said a cat named Muffin. Garfield argued that the wrath of the storm would be much worse than the wrath of the other pets of the world. "Besides," Garfield said, "we'll just make it through the storm and then we'll stop talking and pretend the whole thing never happened, okay? Who's with me?" There was silence in the old theater for a moment, and then Arlene, Garfield's faithful friend, spoke, moving her lips like Garfield had just done. "I'm with you, Garfield." There was a gasp in the audience. But once Arlene had broken the ice, the other pets began to try their voices too. Soon there was singing and yelling and laughter, mixed with the cat calls and barking. Garfield was curious about what Odie's voice would sound like, but when he asked Odie to speak, Odie just barked. Somehow, old boy, I'm not surprised. When they finally tired of hearing their own voices, the pets left the theater. They had a tremendous task before them, to convince their owners a storm was coming and get them to shelter immediately. Back at Barney's house, his owner, Ellie, sat in his favorite old rocking chair, fast asleep. Barney nudged Ellie. Ellie snorted and asked, "What is it, Barney?" "I have something to tell you, Ellie." "You're doggone right you have something to tell me, you old reprobate. I'm dead, right?" Barney chuckled. "No, you old fool. There's a terrible storm coming. We've got to get to shelter, right now. Somehow Ellie didn't seem surprised that Barney could talk. I always knew you could talk, you flea-bitten hunk of buzzard bait. How come you waited till now to speak up? Barney tried to explain to Ellie just how serious the storm was, but Ellie was more interested in talking to his old companion than he was in hearing about the storm. In a dark and dirty alley several blocks from the theater, Arlene approached her home. Arlene's home did not have a fence around it. Arlene's home did not have a yard, a tree, or a flower. Arlene's home didn't even have windows. Arlene lived in a box. She didn't have an owner to warn. Arlene was a stray. Arlene was ashamed of this fact. It was a secret she had kept for many years. Not even her good friend Garfield knew that she was a stray. Most of the cats and the dogs in the neighborhood looked down on stray animals. Arlene was afraid she'd lose her friends if they knew she was an alley cat. And here we can see Arlene going into her box. Back at the Rossini house, Alfredo darted into the room where Angelo sat reading the newspaper. Angelo, listen to us. A storm's coming, a storm's coming. We gotta get out of here. Run, run. Grab the kids, grab the wife. A storm's coming, yipped Alfredo. Angelo lowered his paper. Shut up, you dogs. Go play outside. Never a moment's peace. The wife, she talk all the time. The kids, they talk all the time. The dogs, they talk. Talk? 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 Suddenly Angelo realized what he was saying. Angelo muttered. I don't really know how to, pronounce what the book writes here. That's my best approximation. Angelo, you're not making sense. What are you saying? Asked Gina. Come out here and eat your lunch. A stampede of screaming children raced through the room. Angelo sat in a stupor, mumbling to himself. Mama, Mama, cried the children. The dogs, they talk. There's a storm coming. We gotta run. Come on, Mama. Come on, Pop. Alfredo can talk, cried the children. Mamma mia, the dogs, they talk? What storm? Where? Mamma mia, run, run. Gina ran screaming from the kitchen, with the children and dogs following closely behind. Angelo just sat in his chair, too stunned to move. And you can see the illustration here of the family. Oh, and now there's Garfield. It almost looks like he beat up John rather than trying to rescue him. John was in the kitchen, unloading groceries when Garfield and Odie arrived home. Hi, boys. Remember the surprise I promised you? Said John, in his usual friendly manner. Don't you love surprises? Yes, we do, replied Garfield. Do you? Thump! John fainted and fell in a heap on the floor. Several minutes later, John recovered and sat up. Garfield, I can't believe you're actually talking to me, exclaimed John. Am I dreaming? Am I crazy? Garfield just nodded. Can Odie talk too? Asked John in amazement. Odie just barked and ran in circles. John continued to question Garfield. I have a million questions for you, like, what is it like to have 4 legs? Confusing. Now listen, John. You've got to get out of the house. Can you really see in the dark? Interrupted John. Yes, with a flashlight. Now listen. How do you make that purring sound? John asked. Garfield grabbed John by the collar. When we get to the theater, I'll tell you anything you want to know. Now come on. Can all animals talk? Let's go! Screamed Garfield. And then, here we can see. Wow, this is looking really gloomy. At Ellie's house, the room darkened as the sun was swallowed by a dark cloud. The wind began to howl, and Ellie's rickety old house started creaking as the wind ripped through the neighborhood. I'm not going, Ellie said stubbornly. Do you hear that wind, you old geezer? The storm is going to blow everything away. If you stay here, there will be nothing left of you but a rocking chair and a pair of dentures, Barney argued. Then so be it. We all gotta go sometime. Okay, see if I care, said Barney. I'm not ready to die yet. It's been nice knowing you, old man. Barney, I can't go, Ellie exclaimed. Oh, you wouldn't understand. There's a point in life where you stop making memories and start living in them. All I am is my memories. I can't leave this house. This is where Mother and I raised our children. I just can't leave this old place. I am this old place. With that, Barney walked over to Ellie and quietly laid it at his feet. If Ellie was going to die, Barney was going to go with him. Back at the Rossini household, chaos reigned. "Okay, you kids, line up. Count off. We don't want to forget nobody. Let's go," shouted Angelo. Finally, after lots of yelling and screaming, Angelo was able to line up the children, his wife, and the 2 talking dogs. "All right, everybody, move out and stay in line." As the Rossini family moved outside, the wind picked up one of the children and carried him away. Angelo reached up and grabbed him by the pants, pulling him back to earth. Gina was yelling, "The kids! They're blowing everywhere!" "That's it! Don't nobody blow anywhere! First kid to get blown away gets his bottom spanked!" shouted Angelo. "Pap, I'm scared!" cried one of the children. In the meantime, Al and Fredo were dragging little Tony by his diaper across the floor. "You forgot one," said Al to Angelo as they stepped out the door. Just then another strong gust grabbed their baby and hurled him into the air. Al came to the rescue and pulled little Tony back. Angelo didn't spank him. Instead, he held him tighter, and you can see the baby getting blown away. Oh, here's a good Garfield and John there. John whistled as he casually packed a suitcase with some of his favorite items. "What are you doing?" Garfield cried. "Oh, just packing a few things. Here's Mr. Toothbrush. I never go anywhere without him." "Well, while you're at it, you might as well pack your blue suit. You want to look good at your funeral." Garfield was getting hysterical as the wind rattled the windows. "Here, you better take this lamp. And this clock." Garfield started throwing things at John. "And this pillow. And this glass. And your baby pictures. And don't forget your precious bunny slippers. Isn't there something you were going to take, Garfield?" "No!" Garfield shouted. "Oh, wait. Yes, there is something." Garfield ran out of the room. When he returned, he had Pookie in one paw and the refrigerator cord with the refrigerator still attached in the other paw. John looked at Garfield and shook his head. "Nice try, Garfield," John said, as Garfield reluctantly dropped the refrigerator cord. Garfield, Odie, and John ventured out into the storm. Leaning into a powerful headwind, the threesome pressed on. They weren't alone. All around the neighborhood, houses emptied as pets and their owners headed in the direction of the theater. You have to wonder, what happened to the people who didn't have any pets to warn them? John's journey was made more difficult by the weight of his suitcase, and just as he grabbed a tree to anchor himself to the ground, his suitcase blew open and all his belongings were carried away with the wind. "My bunny slippers!" cried John. "Oh no, and your dinner was in there too!" "This just isn't our day, is it, Odie?" Garfield asked, and John's underwear landed in his face. And there you can see. In a nearby alley, the 3 strays, Bob, Lorenzo, and Willard, argued again. "I think we should go to the old theater," started Lorenzo. "You think? You think? Who's the brains around here, Lorenzo?" asked Willard. "I don't know. Who?" asked Lorenzo. With that, Willard smacked Lorenzo. Next, Willard smacked Bob. "What did you do that for?" Willard asked Bob. "I don't know. Just in case you had any stupid ideas floating around in your head," Willard replied. "Don't worry, there's nothing in there," Bob said. At the end of the alley sat an abandoned car. Willard spotted it and devised a plan. "Okay, you guys, here's the plan. See that car? We're going to drive that car right out of the city. If we get moving, we can beat the storm." "But Willard, we don't know anything about driving," Bob reminded him. "Oh, it's easy," boasted Willard. "Bob, you get on the floor and push the pedals. Lorenzo, you steer. You mutts just do what I tell you, and we'll be fine." The 3 dogs ran down the alley and crawled in through the open windows. "Okay, start the car." "How do we do that?" asked Lorenzo. Willard smacked them both. "Don't you guys know anything?" asked Willard. Eventually the 3 of them figured out how to start the car, and soon it was swerving and jerking down the road, hitting fire hydrants, trash cans, and everything else in the way. "Turn left, Lorenzo," Willard shouted. Willard, what's left?" Lorenzo asked. The sound of screeching tires and screaming dogs filled the air. Ooh, an intense picture here. John, Odie, and Garfield continued toward the theater, fighting rain, wind, and flying debris everywhere. "Come on, boys. We're only a block away," shouted John over the storm. "No problem. Wherever the wind goes, I go," Garfield replied. As they neared the theater, a fiery bolt of lightning ripped through the sky, hitting a telephone pole and cracked into 2. The pole came crashing into the ground, only inches away from John, Garfield, and Odie. Wires snapped and sparks flew all around them. "I guess this would be a bad time to make a long-distance phone call," Garfield mused. We see them flying around in the wind. Still they pressed on. Just as they began to breathe easier, a strong spiraling wind picked up Garfield and carried him away. The gust hurled him down the street, tossing and turning him end over end. Splat! Garfield was pitched right into the stage door of the theater. This looks like my lucky day after all, Garfield said, his back pressed against the door. Blat! Odie came flying through the air, landing right on top of Garfield. Another second later, John flew into the scene, piling on top of Garfield and Odie. The door blasted open, and John, Garfield, and Odie soared into the theater, one after the other. Crash! Splat! Blat! Well, that's one way to make an entrance, said Garfield. And here we see Garfield talking to a purple cat. After Garfield picked himself up and checked to see if he was all there, he scanned the theater to see who had escaped the storm. Many of the neighborhood families had arrived. Garfield spotted Al, Fredo, and the Rossini family. He saw several Muffins and their families, but he didn't see Barney and Ellie. He scanned the room again, and then, to his horror, realized that Arlene hadn't made it there either. "Where's Arlene?" Garfield asked in a panic. "Didn't she make it back with her owner?" "Don't you know, man?" Raoul answered. "Arlene doesn't have an owner. She's a stray, dude. An alley cat." Garfield started for the stage door. He knew what he had to do. There was no time to waste. He struggled with the door and forced his way back outside into the horrible storm that was now engulfing the town. "Arlene! Arlene!" Garfield shouted. His voice could barely be heard over the howling storm. At the end of the street, a huge funnel cloud roared into view. Just in front of the twister, a banged-up car came zooming around the corner. In it sat Bob, Willard, and Lorenzo, eyes wide open and mouths open. Garfield could hear the dogs yelling at each other as the car ripped past him and disappeared around the corner. "Arlene!" Garfield cried. Out of the corner of his eye, Garfield noticed a tail sticking out from under a box in the corner of the alley. He approached the box and lifted it up, not knowing what he'd find. Then his smile returned. Under the box, hiding from the storm, was his good friend Arlene. Garfield grabbed Arlene's paw and pulled her behind him as they headed out of the alley. "We'll never make it, Garfield," said Arlene. "Yes, we will," said Garfield, confidently. Garfield was more determined than ever. He picked up a trash can and dumped the garbage on this ground. "Get in," commanded Garfield. Arlene reluctantly crawled into the dirty can. Once inside, Garfield and Arlene began rocking the can side from side. When the can was in motion, the two cats braced themselves for a bumpy ride. A moment later, thanks to the tornado, they were airborne. "It's not first class, but it'll have to do," said Garfield to Arlene. "Well, it certainly is an inexpensive way to travel," replied Arlene. "I can't say much for the in-flight movie, though." And then we see them flying around. And then they're flying around some more. The storm had reached the peak of its fury. Inside the whirling trash can, Garfield and Arlene held on for their lives. Even though they tried to joke, they knew they were in grave danger. Garfield and the other neighborhood animals had been right. It certainly was the worst storm they had ever seen. Windows shattered, buildings rattled, and debris filled the air as the dark funnel cloud ripped through the town. And it happened again. Bang! The trash can carrying Garfield and Arlene smashed into a telephone pole and came crashing to the ground. It teetered back and forth and then became still. Slowly, dizzily, Garfield and Arlene emerged from the can. "That's the worst landing I've ever seen," said Garfield. "I've seen worse," said Arlene. She took Garfield's paw and squeezed it tightly. Garfield led her toward the theater. The stage door was now in view. "Run!" yelled Garfield. The words had barely left his lips when another blustery rush of wind swept them off their feet. The next thing they knew, their faces were plastered against the stage door. "I'm getting really tired of this," said Garfield. And, wow, look at that. Inside, John heard the two thuds against the door. "What was that?" he wondered, pulling the door open. In flew Garfield and Arlene, the tornado on their heels. John had no sooner forced the door closed when several shards of glass pierced the door like so many daggers. The old theater began to shake and quiver. Windows shattered. Water pipes burst. They felt a sudden change in the air pressure as the roof began to creak. Everyone in the theater, pets and all, looked up in horror and watched as the roof was torn away from the building. Blackness fell upon them. After what seemed like an eternity, the debris on the theater floor began to move. First Garfield and then Arlene emerged. They grasped each other's paws tightly. They could hear moaning all over the room. "Yip, yip, yip," came a sound from the floor. Garfield and Arlene looked around at the sound. It was Odie. He was lying in a shallow puddle, his paws covering his eyes. Garfield grabbed him by the ears and lifted him out of the little puddle while Odie continued whining. "Odie, you're okay, boy. Look, it's all right. You're alive," said Garfield to his frightened friend. Odie peeked from his paws. When he saw Garfield and Arlene standing over him, he smiled and wagged his tail. "Yeah, I know, boy. I love you too," Garfield said, giving him a hug. And there they see each other. And then John finds him and everyone else finds their pets. Garfield! Odie! We're alive! John rejoiced. All around them, pets and their owners emerged from the wreckage. There were bruises and cuts, but miraculously no one was badly hurt. Garfield could feel a relief in the room as the crowd realized they had survived the ordeal. We're alive! Whoopee! Let's eat! Thought Garfield. Garfield, I'm so proud of you. Not only did you save Arlene, but you saved my life too. How will I ever repay you? Asked John, hugging and squeezing his pets. A cash reward comes to mind, thought Garfield. Garfield, speak to me. We have so much to talk about, said John. Garfield looked at John confused. Garfield, talk to me. I know you can do it. I heard you. What about our career in show business? Pleaded John. Garfield shrugged his shoulders. Was I dreaming? Am I nuts? Cried John. Garfield just smiled. The pets had accomplished what they had set out to do, and they all knew it was time to act like pets again. And here we see what happened to the old man and his old dog. Down the street from the theater, or what remained of the theater, Ellie's house was laid flattened by the storm. Ellie stood, bent over the rubble, searching for his faithful friend Barney. He sifted through the ruins carefully until he came upon the motionless body of Barney. Barney, darn your hide! Do something! Don't you dare die on me now! Who's going to wake me in the morning? Who's going to growl at me when I forget to turn the TV off at night? Barney didn't react. Forget what I said about the memories, Barney! My memories are scattered all over the end of this county by now. Hang the memories! Hang everything, Barney! You're the most important thing in the world to me, old boy! Ellie cried. Ellie hung his head, tears streaming down his wrinkled old face. Barney raised his head and licked the tears away. Barney! Why, you mangy old cur! You were playing possum with me, weren't you? You old devil! Boy, am I glad to see you! Ellie hugged Barney tightly, then kissed him on the nose. Even though the storm had wreaked havoc on the town, some good things happened that day. For one, a nice lady took Arlene home to live with her and her cat named Muffin, and the Rossini family returned to their home to find it only slightly damaged and with a new appreciation for Alfredo. They knew Alfredo could be counted on to keep their family safe. Some of the dogs named Spot had taken the opportunity to complain to their owners about the names they had been given. Consequently, there are now dogs in the neighborhood with new, more distinguished names like William, James, Jonathan, and Throckmorton. What the heck is that name? When John, Garfield, and Odie reached their home, they were amazed to see it still standing. Will you look at that? This must be some sort of miracle, exclaimed John. Just then, they heard a rattling, clanking, clattering noise in the street. They turned to see Lorenzo, Willard, and Bob sitting behind the wheel of what was once a car. As the car came to a halt, the front, back, and back bumpers dropped off. Then the car doors, the hood, and the trunk fell to the ground. Lorenzo, Willard, and Bob sat in the street, the entire car a shambles. Lorenzo still had the steering wheel tightly clenched in his paws. John turned back to open his front door. As he turned the doorknob to enter, the house began to shudder and creak. First the left wall of the house collapsed. Then the right wall came down. As the front and back of the house began to cave in, John just stood, the doorknob in his hand and his mouth agape. My home! My castle! What's next? Cried John. Garfield approached, holding the door handle to the refrigerator in his paw. My home! My castle! Thought Garfield. John and Garfield laughed and hugged each other. They knew the house and the refrigerator could both be replaced, but the really important thing, their friendship, had survived the storm, and that made them feel both really, really lucky. Now we see. And that's the end of the book. I think this would have been a more interesting movie than the 2004 Garfield movie with the CGI. Jeez. That movie wasn't very good. Well, I hope you all enjoyed me reading this book, and I hope Paws Inc. doesn't try to send any black helicopters or anything on my house.
Hello, this is Jim Davis, broadcasting you live from Paws Incorporated. I've hacked into this YouTube video to issue a national security alert for the arrest of Peter the Cat. This hooligan fanboy broke into the Paws Inc. vault and stole our last copy of Garfield's Judgment Day. I have alerted President Obama to send SWAT teams and drone strikes all over the country to search for him. If you have any information that would lead to his capture, dead or alive, preferably dead, please contact us through the Garfield website. Now, if you excuse me, I have to make a business trip to China so I can sell more Garfield MasterCards.
So anyway, Peter the Cat here. Bye, everyone. Excuse me. Ugh, I'm hacking a hairball. Excuse me. Excuse me. Been eating too much cat mix.